Okay, so if you can settle so that we can start the last session of the day. It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce my chair and my mentor and my amazing colleague, if I may say, Professor Gary Hilderbrand, as a moderator of the session 4. Gary Hilderbrand is the Peter Louis Hornbeck Professor in Practice and Chair of the Department of Landscape Architecture of Harvard GSD. He is also principal and founder of Hilderbrand Landscape Architects. Hilderbrand is a fellow and resident of the American Academy in Rome. He received the Design Medal from ASLA in 2017. His widely acclaimed publications include the Miller Garden Icon of Modernism and Visible Invisible Landscape Works of Hilderbrand, published by Metropolis in 2018. So please welcome Professor Gary Hilderbrand.
Thank you, Yuni. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for your stamina. And thanks, Yuni, for the challenge of following those 3 panels that were before us today. Amazing work, amazing reportage, amazing scholarship. What a day, really. This segment is called Beyond Sansu, sansui, shanshui. What can we imagine beyond those? Well, we had some clues today. What you will see in the projects presented at the end of this remarkable day is a set of contemporary tendencies in urban works, mostly of landscape architecture, that embody the dynamic realities of an active living ground in a changing, unpredictable, and more turbulent climatic condition. These projects, like so many shown in the gallery outside, reconcile a high degree of restored ecological function with a heightened expression of nature, culture, confluence. And we heard that so many times last night and today. More than the stillness of the mountain, more than the dynamics of water. As Yuhan said in the previous panel, radically biodiverse. How do we achieve that? How do we achieve that beyond the rainforest? As Chisa-san said, well-being is spatialized. I think that is traditional, but that is back. And that's one of the things that we are going to see today. And Chisa-san also said, let nature take it over. And this is big, right? So I'm going to introduce our speakers, then we're going to have a short video, and then I'll ask them to come to the podium, and then we'll finish the afternoon with the panel discussion, and then remarks, final remarks. First, amazing pleasure to introduce Dong Wang. He leads the EcoCity Design Center at Tourandscape. He has many projects out there in the gallery, and serves as Deputy Director of the Nature-Based Solutions Innovation Center at Peking University. He specializes in sponge city design and ecological planning with a portfolio spanning more than 100 projects across China, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Dong is a frequent speaker at international forums and contributes to Chinese ecological restoration standards and publications. We're so pleased you could be here. Our good friend Shunsaku Miyagi is a founding partner of Place Media, just a great firm, in Kyoto and Tokyo, which has worked in Japan and internationally for the past 35 years. Shun Sensei holds a master in landscape architecture from Harvard GSD. We were here together as students, and a PhD in urban design studies from Kyoto University. His extensive academic career includes appointments of Associate Professor in Landscape Architecture at Chiba University and Professor in Urban Design at the University of Tokyo. Shun is also visiting Professor of Landscape Architecture at the GSD He will be going on his third year next year. And we're sincerely grateful because, his dedicated stewardship of our relationships in Japan and his commitment to deep learning at the GSD are very special. The amazing Yoonjin Park, where are you going? Took his MLA here. I remember it well. He's a founding principal, as you know, of Park Kim, based in Seoul and Boston. His important publication, which was shown earlier today, Alternative Nature, co-authored with Uni Kim, established a novel conceptual frame for the urban experience of nature without parks. No room for parks in Seoul. It's a distinct reality of modern Seoul. Yoonjin is a frequent visitor to GSD. We always welcome his smiling face and has won so many recognitions for the work of Park Kim, and we eagerly await, within a month, the monograph, long awaited. I had the pleasure to write a preface for this book. I can tell you that it is a standout. Before our first speaker, who will be Dong, we're going to play a brief video of an interview between Uni Kim and Professor Kongjian Yu. As most of you or all of you know, we lost Kongjian in a tragic accident in October. He was planning to be here today. He had planned to be here in October. He had planned to be in Los Angeles in December. He had planned to be in Barcelona in November. So I feel that he is still very present because of so much energy, so much connectivity with the community of landscape architects around the world. And he passed doing what he loved, and we'd all wish for that. Let's watch.
So sansui, sun and sui, the mountain and water, right? Sansui. But remember, landscape in the culture, so Chinese culture, we have long, also Korea have long history of agriculture, dominant. And when you think about agriculture, the society is divided into two classes. One is emperor and his royal family and his nobles, elite class. And then you have these farmers, peasantry, working, producing food, working hard in the rural area. So for thousands of years, these two classes. In urban area, the elite, the emperor state. So sansui at the beginning, landscape culture at the beginning, divided into two kinds of cultures. One culture is working in the landscape, working with soil, working with adaptation to climate, to flood, to recycle the nutrient, recycle water, recycle material. So this is one kind of landscape. In European culture, this will be called land plus people. So land and people. So that's a word you can make reference to Landschaft. Landschaft.
Right.
So Landschaft, the original meaning is land and people. Well, there are another class, which is the emperor. Particularly like in Song Dynasty, this is Song Huizong. He himself is a cultural, he's a landscape, passionately into the art of landscape. He's a painter, and he created garden, a rockery garden in his capital. He even sacrificed everything. He teared down the wall in order to get the Taihu Lake rockery. The rockery, we have in this building, there's some kind of Chinese code. So rockery is a very distorted, beautiful, we can say beautiful. So this is a typical metaphor for sun, mountain. So you use this rockery as a symbol of mountain, and create a garden which is made of water and rockery, and the pavilion, of course, inside. But this is for elite. Okay. Well, in history, in historical, you never see anything about the peasantry. You don't see how people working with the land. How the irrigated landscape, the cultivate the rice paddies, how they harvest this land. It's a low culture. Not it's a historical.
Low culture.
So for a long time, people only record the high culture, which is sansui. So painting, how you enjoyment of forms of sansui. So for a long time, this culture. There's a Chinese start from Chinese classic. There's a Chinese classic called the Sanhai Jing. Water, mountain and sea classic. Sanhai Jing, it's dated back 2,000 years, which have fantasy, all the fantasies. Fantasies, the people with wings, people immortals, fairyland. Now this fantasy being attraction for the emperors. So the emperors create together with the emperors, the Chinese paintings, the Chinese drawings, the Chinese garden, all together belong to this high elite art, elite art of the landscape. So I call it high art. So for a long time, landscape is a high art, right? Like fine art, part of the fine art. So gardening, basically inspired by the drawings, the paintings. Well, the painters, usually the elite, leisure class. He don't care about the cultivation, he don't care about the food. He just looking for drawings as an imagination of the from inside. The Shangri-La, the paradise, which is an escape. So sansui is an escape from reality. Okay. So you have to understand why sansui in China become a high culture. Nothing to do with daily life. Nothing to do with day-to-day agriculture, which is too hard, which is survival. So I describe it as an art of survival, and art of fantasy, or art as ornament, art as pleasure. So that's why when you look at the Chinese painting, you didn't see anything actually about the survival. It always fantasy. Even people in Chinese landscape painting, the people is very tiny, right? And always have some cottages, buildings, or even palace, hiding among the mountain, inside the water, among the water and mountain. So that's from sansui as a high art. So, but the other part is missing. That's the landscape, I think. So that's two landscape culture.
And then field is missing.
The field is missing, the farmer is missing.
Right.
The farmer only become an ornamental figure. It's something enduring. Yeah. So that's the understand the Chinese for 2,000 years until I would say before until this time I would say we recognize that there's no more fantasy. Climate is changing, right? The global is changing. But still fantasy is still here. Okay, fantasy is still like Avatar. When you look at Avatar, did you see Avatar? The beautiful picture is inspired by sansu. The Chinese sansu. The rockeries, the mountains, with fogs, the cloud. So these all relate to this kind of landscape, which I think it's part of Chinese landscape culture, of course, but it's not enough today. That's why today's landscape architecture, I will say, the major part we are missing.
That's a field.
That's a field, and it's a fighting against, it's a survival part.
I'd like to take a short minute to contemplate. And then I'd like to lift spirits, because knowing him as we did, he would want us not to dwell, but to celebrate his legacy and always feel the energy he brought to the room. That was beautiful. And now, one of Kongjian's closest friends and colleagues, Dong, please.
Wow. Congratulations about everything, and thank you for having me. Means a lot to me. Yeah, my name is Dong from Turnscape, and I was Professor Yu's student at Peking University, and I work with him. I study and work with him already for more than 16 years. So, wow, I still can't believe that. His passing is a huge loss for us all. But however, his groundbreaking work in negative planning, in spongeicity, in the climate adaptive landscape will continue to guide and inspire our team forever. So in the video, Professor, you noted that within China's high culture landscape, there often lack of how their people, the normal people, adapt to the land and climate. And that is why after he returned from Harvard, he dedicated his more than 30-year career in China to rediscovering the wisdom of survival. So beyond shanshui, we think that is the nature-based living. It's a future, but rooted in the past. So in his final paper published in Nature Water, he said, and I quote, "The planet is in crisis. Only bold, new thinking can save it." That's because when our shanshui are facing increasingly severe challenges like flood, drought, even sea level rise in shui, water, and habitat loss, wildfire in mountain. So, but conventional solution, conventional infrastructure, you can see how they treat the shanshui, the mountain and water. They're still doing this kind of green infrastructure, higher and higher flood wall, narrow down and channelize the river, but they will fail, and will fail with disaster. So water will always win. So that's why we need a new solution, the alternative solution, which we call Sponge Planet. It's a land-based, water-driven, holistic solution. And its philosophy is to retain water at the source, slow down the flow, embrace water as a thing. That's the whole idea of sponge planet. And maybe you already know our inspiration comes from the monsoon culture. During these years, we develop and upgrade this traditional wisdom, these nature-based technologies into replicable design engineering modules with scientific method and proof, and apply them to modern ecological engineer in large scale. So we already have more than 1,000 projects in 250 cities. But next few minutes, I'll just introduce 2 new projects located in North China, like Beijing, and Southern China in Shangrao city. So you can see here, 1,300 years ago, in the mountains of Yunnan, 200 meters above the sea level, the local farmers transformed the barren slope into terraced rice paddies, collected every drop of rainwater, making the land productive and beautiful. And today, we're using the same idea to restore dry and concrete river banks. So this project, it's my school, Peck University. We have a new campus located in the foot of the mountain by the very small river in northwest Beijing, in Changping district. However, climate change has brought greater challenges. But when we look at this river, we found that it has turned from the free-flowing river and wetland into concrete channels and impermeable pavement plaza. You can see from the picture. And when we look at the site, the local government would even plan to raise this flood wall by another 1.5 meters to meet the so-called 50-year flood standard. But such infrastructure cannot handle the challenges we are facing. So we propose an alternative solution, a very simple solution. So we're removing the concrete top flood wall, set it back, terracing slope, rewild the whole area, and create a space that can be shared between people and water, but at different time. This natural river corridor can hold more water, purify, reclaim the water, serve as a habitat for wildlife, and function as a wetland park where people can reconnect it with nature. So you can see this is before, this is a rendering. You can see here we make the whole area permeable and even can invite the flood to come in. So this is after in dry season. During monsoon season, the lowest level of the boardwalk is submerged underwater. And this is also before, you can see all concrete, impermeable. It's in process. We dig all the concrete out, terrace the slope. We even recycle the concrete on site as a foundation of the boardwalk. And this is after in dry season. You can see here, this in monsoon season, all flooded. And this is also before. The whole river was channelized, and they tried to use this, the red bed, handle the water pollution, but failed. So we removed the top concrete, but keep the bottom, the foundation, to make this shallow wetland area with tree islands in, ecotone. Use nature's power, and you can see it's all floodable. Yeah. In late July 2023, Beijing was hit by the heaviest rainfall they told me it's in 140 years, 400 millimeter of rainwater in just one day. So almost a year's precipitation. And at that time, this project was only 60% complete, yet you can see it still showed the power of nature resilience, like a giant sponge to absorb all the flood water and prevent the buildings from being flooded. An assignment report from an independent consultant showed that the entire project provides a flood storage capacity of over 100,000 cubic meter, and they even mapping the disaster mitigation effects of the ecological restoration projects. And you can see here, when the flood receded, it recovered in short term after the risk, and it's a power of nature itself. Yeah, you can see the bird coming back, even the black swan, and the how to say, the wild duck. And you can see here the comparisons between the rewild nature and the artificial facilities make the another alternative beauty, I think. So even in the winter, you can see it's like a ink paint. It's like a shanshui. So it's quite beautiful. Huh? The how to say, the pavilion. And in southern China, where water is abundant, too much water, you can see from here, by pounding the ground, islanding the water, islanding the lake, people find a way to survival from the mushes, find a way to live with water. So, and such wisdom is a very inspiration behind this project. I mean, Xinjiang River, Xinjiang Ecological Corridor project. So the whole idea is porous and spongy, from the footage to the waterfront to improve degraded habitat with minimal disturbance to the land, thereby create a more flood-resilient ecosystem. Yeah, so you can see from here, the achieved through the modular pounding and islanding create porous landscape that retain water and the moisture, filtering storm water from nearby mountain valleys, enriching ecotones and supporting, the wildlife. You can see this is a master plan, and this is before, and this is after. This is also after in autumn, and also the birds coming back. The whole you have water, you have everything, you have biodiversity, and the residents in the surrounding area are now enjoying a closer connection with nature in their daily life. We also integrated the existing farmland into the design, preserving the memory of the place on site. Yeah. While the children here can enjoy the food production. Nowadays, they don't have that enough opportunity to get to know how we produce the food in the big city. So, and no need to fight with flood. Just embrace it as ecological process. It's a natural process. You can see during the flood season, the park shows its strong capacity for flood storage, show its nature's resilience. Even during flood, the people can still use the park safety because the skywalk. And the park has become a local landmark and provided replicable modules for ecological restoration, especially in flood plains. The last but not the least, Professor Yu's alternative vision is Sponge Planet. As I mentioned before, it's a holistic and nature-based solution to harvest the nature's free services and to heal our common planet and benefit the welfare of people. And we are still doing it, but not just in China, but overseas. I just add more slides yesterday because a lot of people are concerned about our firm. So. During these years, we are doing the international project. I mean, this is something we did during COVID. It's in Bangkok. It's Banjak Forest Park. We transformed a former tobacco factory into a nature-based sponge park. And it has been recognized by IUCN as a global best practice in nature-based solution. Yeah, and this is something I'm doing right now in Manila. It's a Pasay City Central Park project I'm working on. We use nature-based solution to restore mangroves while creating a beautiful park and to catalyst the surrounding development. And this is in Almaty, Kazakhstan. The similar idea, we apply a minimal intervention approach to restore the big Almaty River. Yeah, we have more others, but my time is over. So that's our sponge planet, and Professor Yu's legacy, and we try our best to transform the dry, hot, and dirty into sponge planet, and that is cool, wet, and lush. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Oh, you? Okay. Is this yours? Done? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much for this opportunity. And Nicholas and Jungyeon. And after looking at such a huge, large-scale, wonderful project, they really makes me feel myself so small. Okay. Thank you for your kind, and opportunity. And it is my great pleasure and honor to be a part of this important event with such a prominent figures in our profession. Today, in my talk, I will focus on the presence of mountain and water reflected on the contemporary practice of landscape design in Japan from two significantly different perspectives for two cities, respectively. First, I'd like to talk about the presence of water and mountain and water in terms of traditional notion found commonly in the garden design of Kyoto, an ancient capital city and that has been an epicenter of garden culture of Japan for over 1,200 years. It is my hometown as well. The area of old capital, the prototype of today's Kyoto, was defined at the end of the 8th century, surrounded by mountains to the east, west, and north. Most of the area is located on the mid to low terrace of inland composite alluvial fan, developed by several rivers flowing out of mountains. These topographical, geological, and hydrological advantages are deeply related to the abundance of water available in many ways, including the development of so many and so wide variety of gardens in the region. There has been a custom in Japan to refer to garden as sansui. San means the mountains or the vegetation that covers it. And sui is literally water itself. And the compound of two characters, sansui, means a garden. A famous sansui painting from the 16th century, this is Seishu, shows an imaginary landscape of mountain and water, and the waterfall and stream of Murian in Kyoto is nothing less than the physical representation of an ideal form of sansui. However, these visual references do not take into any accounts of relative scale in the composition. It is transcending the scale. Behind this way of looking things and sensibility is an aesthetic concept quite unique to Japan, which is mitate, or the metaphoric representation. It is a poetic mind of seeing one thing as another. Mitate is a keyword in this context of design expression. Here is a recent small design project of our own in Kyoto. There is the urban context. This is the urban context of the project site. On the left of the center is the Nijojo Castle, one of the many World Heritage sites in Kyoto. And to the east of that was the area concentrated large residences of upper class of aristocrats in 9th century through 12th century, as indicated in yellow. This area corresponds to a relatively stable land conditions and abundant groundwater. The site of that project is about the northern quarter of Horikawa Inn, which was one of those residences. After regime change from aristocracy to samurai, the site was the headquarters of Mitsui family. That is the origin of today's Mitsui Corporation. These traditional houses and the gardens were demolished after World War II due to the dissolution of a business conglomerate. Then a new guest house was built on the site, but fortunately, the stoneworks and the materials from the original garden were reused in it. In 2014, the original owner of the property bought it back and revived it as another accommodation facility. In this, in the garden, in the design process, the first thing we did was to verify the originality of the preserved stoneworks and how they were used in the original garden by carefully investigating the plan and photographs found in the archives. We proposed a complex staggered form of architectural wall line centered around a 1,500 square meter courtyard. The room on the ground floor facing the courtyards are all public spaces. Following the route from the drop-off through the reception and lobby lounge and walk around to the north or south, you can have a garden view from various angles and directions and even step into it. The reception lounge has 5 glass doors with a single span of 13.8 meters wide that can be completely opened, facing the garden under good weather conditions. It creates a space in which the architecture and gardens are completely integrated. In this view, the presence of flat water surface in the foreground, the tree on the right, which is a weeping cherry, and the group of trees behind it together amplify the sense of depth of the courtyard, along with the continuous staggered architectural wall leading to far distant end. Since most of the water surface is set on top of the previous underground structure, it must be thin water film, about 10 millimeters thick. This water film follows slowly from the front to the center, along the slope of 1% gradient, creating a gentle ripple of the water surface. The water outlet is a slit about 10 millimeters wide, and this width and length create the ideal movement of the water surface. On the other side of the courtyard, a small grove of trees and the stream suggest a representation of a mountain. This is a special manifestation of mountain retreat in the middle of a city, a practical concept that had been observed among the people of Kyoto since medieval time. The technical drawings are specifying precise details of how to compose the section of different parts of the stream one by one. These details are essential specifications to physically realize the relationship between san and sui as a landscape composition that transcends the scale. Second project is remarkably different from the one in Kyoto. It is about the concept of mountain and water reflected directly on the natural resources, which a vision of sustainable residential community is heavily relying on. The Kurobe River alluvial fan has been developed in the downstream coastal area of Kurobe River, which is originated in the Japan Alps north. I think Chisa-san has already introduced this alluvial fan thing. Topographically, the alluvial fan has a gentle and even slope of 1% gradient, creating ideal conditions for the dynamics of water flow network. It provides abundant, high-quality water resources both above and below the ground. Groundwater has a stable temperature throughout the year, making it highly useful not only for the drinking, agriculture, and industrial use, but for natural thermal source. Another important point is that this region is blessed with the cool northeastern wind that flows across the sea and rice paddies. These winds are mostly prevalent from May through October. The primary goal of Pacific Town project is to make highly effective use of abundant natural resources and the energy provided by mountain and water. It was extremely fortunate for me to be involved in this project from the very beginning to the end as both master planner and landscape designer. This is the overall view of the project site in last September, right after completion of the last block, which is block number 5. The project concepts are first, maximizing the use of the renewable natural energy, 2, providing a comfortable living environment while reducing energy consumption, developing a variety of passive design solutions and verifying their performance, evoking the energy sensitivity of the people in the open communities across the region. The area of approximately 35,600 square meter was subdivided into 5 blocks, and the project started late in 2011, right after devastating disaster of earthquake and tsunami in northeast of Japan. Blue color indicates the area of water, including the local stream, part of the agricultural irrigation channel diverted into the site, and small water features utilizing the groundwater. Throughout phase 1, architectural design of first 3 blocks features different passive design solutions proposed by 3 different architects, respectively. Those were broadly categorized into highly promoting ventilation, improving the insulation performance, avoiding the heat bridge effect, and enhancing the thermal storage. Center Common is a north-south rectilinear green spaces mostly covered by trees and grass with water streams and water surface well integrated as well. It is open to general public and accessible from anywhere. Evaluation and verification of passive design performance have been conducted from summer of 2016 to winter of 2018. The evaluation committee was made up of the external third-party expert and various physical data such as interior temperature, humidity, and air movement, as well as actual energy consumption per unit were accurately measured and recorded. The outcome tells us that actual energy consumption in average per unit per year turned out significantly lower than those in the region and even below the target value, which was set through the process of master planning. Then design for the second phase was started in 2020. A program for block number 4 is a nursery school. Target was to achieve the net zero energy building, and it was accomplished in 100% wooden structured architecture. The last and the largest block of this project, which was block number 5, was just completed last summer. According to strong orientation toward carbon neutrality, it set a much more ambitious goal to achieve. It includes 3 mid-rise residential complexes of hybrid structure of steel and wood with local materials supplied from the forest in the region. It also contains equipment to be applied to power to gas system using green hydrogen for energy source. Although altogether, these endeavors led to the higher self-sufficiency of the energy supply. Furthermore, a wide variety of water features have been set throughout the entire passive town. The water sources are agriculture irrigation channel and groundwater. Neither of these is intended for recirculation. Instead, the water is returned directly to the local water network system. Through the presence of water, people recognize the sustainable relationship between the mountains, water, and their lives. In conclusion, I'd like to address some points. In Kyoto, a compound word of sansui is what the garden is all about, based on the traditional notion. When it comes to Kurobe, topography and geology represent mountain, hydrology represent water, and those are indispensable resources to be shared in environmentally sensitive communities. From the standpoint of design profession, in Kyoto, the approach to sansui, that is garden, will focus on the aesthetic perception of landscape composition based on the awareness of mitate, or metaphoric representation. In Kurobe, we primarily focused on a wide variety of passive design solutions, and what made it possible was landscape-oriented planning and design process. In any case, the field designers can be involved directly is limited to the certain spatial domain. However, in Kyoto, the landscape recognized on the scale of the geographical basin surrounded by the mountain provides an inspiration for garden design, which will contribute to the constantly stimulating people's sensitivity to nature. In Kurobe, the sustainable water resources provided by the alluvial fan and mountains behind will contribute to the developing community that seeks environmental sensitive lifestyles. Being surely based on the field, what is expected of a landscape architect in our generation is, I think, to nourish and maintain a sensibility that makes us move freely across much wider scale of landscape, just like a white dot on the screen. I believe this is what the mountain and water tell us today. Thank you very much. Now we have Yoonjin Park for the next speaker. Please welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, I'm Yoonjin Park of Parkim. Thanks for your stamina. It's great, and it is a great honor to be part of this event. I'd like to thank to Dean Sarah Wang and my teacher Gary Hilderbrand and Jung-Yoon and Nick, and to make this venue such a wonderful and meaningful discussion for our field. I think this conference and exhibition make three important contributions. First, it locates sansu as a shared core of Asian culture of nature. Second, it interprets reason through the landscape lens rather than political boundary of nation-state. You know, the familiar national framing, Chinese garden, Japanese garden, or Korean garden, still valid, but they are predictable. Nature-based reason opens new possibilities and is particularly relevant in the era of climate change. Third, groups of beautiful section drawing outside suggest the exhibition refused to understand bioreason only as green surfaces. Instead, it reveals the underlying structure, the sansu, the mountain and water that generates green or any other surfaces. In other words, it asks us to look behind greenery itself, attend to deep ground that functions green. Many people say, it's a little redundant, but geographically and historically speaking, Korean Peninsula has been a place where mountain and water are present in everyday life. Sansu was not a distant, imaginary scenery. It was reality we encountered in our everyday life. That's why I define Sansu as the real. I totally agree with Kun Marisa. If you look at Jung-san's famous painting in Wang, you don't see any invented fantasy, imaginary, but the beauty of actual mountain that people live with and loved. A visitor and scholar in 19th century openly remarked that the modern import park could not compete with immediacy of sansu. You know, this is by origin PA48. You see Pinus densiflora. However, because sansu is so close to us, this proximity makes it vulnerable. As Koreans went through poverty and rapid urbanization, sansu was occupied, but it could be generosity of sansu. President Park Chung-hee, high modernist and authoritarian ruler, can be seen as Olmsted of Korea, who founded professional landscape architecture of the country. Actually, landscape architecture in Korea emerged as part of the process of overcoming poverty. Most of PA48 is afforested. Jung-Yoon and I grew up in kind of highly urbanized territory. We are as old as Korean landscape profession and averaged forest of sansu PA48. However, as sansu is too common, close at hand, a dime a dozen, it has been treated carefully, relentlessly. Then how can we engage sansu in this circumstance? While it grounded in inherent legacy of sansu, it should continue to evolve with engineering. In other words, it can be an artificial construct, artifact. We call this alternative nature. Okay, thanks, Gary. Even though it is artificial, it performs the function of nature or evokes an experience of nature, we include it. This is multiple nature. We can be both natural and artificial. This will increase our options. Sansu can be freely topographized. Sansu can be revived structurally. Sansu can be chromatized in form of climate change. Eventually, sansu can be rewild. In other words, we can accelerate the function of sansu. The reality. In the context of a heavily engineered city like Seoul, capital of PA48, recurring sansu must often begin with the most functional dimension. To make a deal with engineers and public agency, we start by speaking their language with their issues, for example, flood control. rather than by appealing to poetic inspiration. I'm very jealous about Kyoto. And it is about mud and sansu. On Han River, for example, the most urgent issue were recurring flood and the huge volume of mud they brought. The idea in Yanghua was to stretch existing terrace condition to flush the mud into the river. Though the relentless discussion with hydrologists, first engineering, we came up with very precise counterplan. After construction, gentle slope, welcome visitors, and vegetation has nurtured as many anglers, fishermen, can be seen here. This is evidence that fish are returning. Reed and willows growing well. The long, narrow bench installed parallel to the flow of water using hydraulic engineering technique. This hydro bench has a romantic quality as well. Because bench is long, it ensures an appropriate distance for romance. The more it is engineered, the more romance it appeals to bring. When it rains, the river water level rises. After it rains, the very salt water edge appears, something rarely seen in urban environment. Hey, there are still fishermen. As water level of Han River rises, the shoreline takes on various forms. After flood, majority of mud flushed back to the river, but still some remain to form the mud beach emerged. Flood bring new seed to the slopes. This is a hybrid space of riparian and inland species. New ecology begins. This was last fall. Multi-stem willow is merged enough. Now you see the mud beach. A sansu and structure. President Park modern project, Gyeongbu Highway, in the 70s, it was inevitable to cut the mountain to build a highway. The leader of a poor country has only a few options. Very interestingly, the site became the subject of a design competition where the challenge was to propose eco-bridge spanning the Gyeongbu Highway. In the 70s, the place was where two rich met, but it was damaged due to the construction of a highway. So we decided to revive the lost sansu as a bridge structure. In order to create a healthy forest, on upper level, a robust supporting structure needed below. To achieve this, we thought it was best to utilize the resistance of a cut slope, kind of load of the earth. By repeating series of individual arches, we create the form of two lost ridge lines. Through ongoing conversation with structural engineer, second engineering, the form was further refined, resulting in a shell arch structure that celebrates the forest suburb and evokes the surrounding topography. We proposed not only soil depth of 2 meters, but also artificial aquifer that allows water to collect and form a reservoir after drainage. This ensured that moisture could be supplied to the forest even during the period of extreme drought. The disconnected ridges are linked by artificial sansu, while the existing and new differ in form. They are structurally interdependent. Although we did not win, it feels like we finished unfinished project of President Park Stream Green Highway. This is competition for outdoor auditorium. Yes, we win eventually. And now we are currently finalizing the detailed design at the office. What should a public venue look like in one of the hottest cities in Korea? This was the first question we asked. And we found our answer in old photograph of sansu. The surrounding mountain and river generate wind. And we thought that if you could harness that wind well, we create a naturally cool performance venue. Next, we brought in climate engineer. Third, engineering. Through a series of fascinating simulation and prediction, we identified the precise location that would give us the coolest possible stage. And rotate the hill and rescale them to maximize the movement of wind and beam projection. We made every circulation route accessible for the wheelchairs, and the wind-shaped seating offered a range of viewpoint and make it possible for performance to unfold freely behind the fixed stage. Structurally, it is not floating, but thanks to the stable water level, we are able to locate the stage level as close to the water surface as possible. The flat slab provides the shade over the lake, lowering water temperature in midsummer, and its column can serve as a breeding habitat for fish. This is render view. I know it looks too real, thanks Mir, but mostly chosen image by the public and media. When stage filled with water, it becomes a mirror pond, then become a part of a lake, very thin layer of water. It doesn't snow very often in Daegu, like here, but when it does, the artifact hill become unforgettable sansu. How can we further accelerate the natural function of sansu in the era of climate change? This is about future of sansu. We test that possibility here at Harvard with Jung-Yoon. Neil, Gary, Anita were very important critics for us. This is lost nature map of Seoul. How much sansu has Seoul lost? We create a map to guide the rewilding of the city. Michael proposed a new sansu through vertical wilding in areas prone to frequent flooding. There is no more untouched wilderness left, not even the forest of Siberia, PA7. It is heavily extracted by global timber companies. He proposed a new model of forest restoration, combining alternative nature with accelerate nature succession on. We can utilize the convection and cold climate of Lake Baikal. And her proposal was amazing, to using melting point of Lake Baikal and utilize new convection system for water purification. Last slide. How do we go beyond the inherent sansu in era of climate change? We believe sansu must be its natural function further accelerated, but it must be capable of being regenerated, not as a single form fixed, but through multiple form and experience. And this process, I think, landscape architecture being called on to exercise new form of leadership. And I think we must respond to that call right now. Thank you.
Please join me. This is not an easy task. We've been on a remarkable journey this afternoon. We have been inundated with amazing project work, some of which we have not seen before. A bit of a grand tour today through territory that I only know a little bit. I feel like I have learned a lot, and I know a lot more, and I want to know more. It has, given me, I'd say, a greater appetite. And I so appreciate that all three of you gave us really captivating examples of shanshui, sansui, and sansu. They really took the brief to heart. But it's more than that. I think they believe what they're talking about. And there is proof in every one of the projects that we saw today, probably 5, 7, 12, around 12. The responsibility we have today to careful use of resources, to care about reversing extractive practices, the honoring of traditions while moving them forward. All of that can be done with beauty. So much beauty on the screen. I've been thinking about two things. One is that all of this work honors the traditions of sansu and so on. Some of it adheres quite strictly to the tradition. In the case of the Mitsui project, great deal of respect for the tradition, but with modern technology and kind of a modern frame. It's in close. But you know, we spoke, I think, earlier about the recognition that this recreation of mountain and water in densifying Kyoto in 18th, 19th, 20th centuries meant it was a private experience, and I think that's what a guest at the hotel gets. But then in Kurabe, which I have seen, I'm hoping to get back to see Block 5. It's a much more expansive view of that, and then the performance aspects of it are truly remarkable and proven, right? In that bridge project, right? So I'm on the traditions. There's a good deal of control in both of your projects, Shun. And then almost see a bit of the opposite here. Nature is coming in very fast. So you relinquish control, in a sense. You get it started. By the way, I wanted to say, we were all very concerned about Turnscape. And I was, really, until just like a couple of weeks later talking to Tony Wu and Dong. And it's like, I'm not worried about Turnscape. And what you saw today, there is no worry. Now I'm also thinking about education and practice. Because we didn't talk about that in China, nor did we talk about it. Well, we talked about it in Korea and we talked about it in Japan, but I think we had an incomplete discussion. And I wanted to bring that question back, Shun. We know the tradition which comes from President Park and really a political start to a landscape architecture for the Republic of Korea. We know from the video with Kongjian that the landscape architecture comes from a way of combining that which meant something very powerful to the elites and that which was an everyday engagement with non-elites. Such a provocative thing that he talked about there. And we know that the schools in South Korea and the schools in China are extremely strong. And we said this about Thailand, Thammasat, and Chulalongkorn. We said it about RMIT in Australia. But we came upon this question of whether landscape architecture in Japan has a need of a kind of reform because it seems attached often to large companies, engineering schools, and then the power of Japanese architects and the power of Japanese engineers and their big infrastructure work. I know we had a short conversation at lunch, and I wanted you to have a chance to enlighten.
Well, thank you. Well, that kind of issue you raised is that it's been, I have been thinking about that for a long, long time. And also the reason why I came here to GSD 40 years ago is the, incentive to think about, future education. And that's why I had some kind of teaching position in Japan right after the return. But at
And your
the same
PhD
time,
as well?
yeah, at the same time, I needed to do practice side by side. So that's the kind of things we really try to do. I tried to do. But today's morning second session, yeah, we had some kind of conversation about some strong architecture. And civil engineering power in Japanese company or practice, and also the education. Yeah, that's true. So there's no way to deny it. But I think I have many projects, mostly the collaboration with architects. So probably having those kind of relationship with the architect, and for example, the two projects I showed today, I think I have changed the architectural volume based on the how the garden should be or how the open space should be. So is the the Grove project, because I've been a master plan from the very beginning to the end. Of course, detailed design or some kind of the architectural design should be done architect, but the layout of each building blocks and building volume, well, it kind of my responsibility to do it. So there is some kind of clue to through which I think we should pursue the further development of the relationship with the architect. But in the case of civil engineering, the story is a little difficult because the scale is. But last year we had fall of 2024. Yes, we had some wonderful just the option studio with Jung Kim, and we co-taught the studio. And a couple of students proposed a very interesting, which kind of proposal for the Grove River and those areas. It's in that project. I think to me those projects are kind of civil engineering work in my definition or our definition, sort of, about the time. But I think I got some kind of clue. So I thought, those are the kind of, new profession which cover both landscape and the civil engineering, also some resiliency, the sustainability, and everything together. So I kind of get some kind of, incentive to pursue that kind of directions and so on.
And we want more Japanese students here. They are remarkable. Yoonjin, I was almost shaken by your mentioning that the reel of sansu was ultimately canceled in Seoul, but that led to your. I think it's a breakthrough, and the original book was only published in Korean, but it led to your formulation of alternative nature that can be both natural and artificial. Burying the aquifer in the bridge versus like showing the water, letting the water just inundate. There's quite a difference there. Can you explain? It's like it's a hidden mechanism. It's not revelatory in a sense, right?
Yes, and I thank you for the question. Such a great question. And so maybe certain territory has a certain different level of engineering level. But in Korea, first a dominator was engineer. We need a bridge, everything, probably in Japan and China. So they already established before we jump in.
I see.
And so it's very hard as a second player and third player to catch up. So we have to speak their language, I mentioned, but but eventually we can win because I think we are designer. Yeah, we are designer. They number. So public and mayor, for example, they prefer beautiful drawing. So it's like us, but they make a paper, we make a project. We are both happy, yeah. And so I think it's a great collaboration, but the dominance of engineer in Korean Peninsula, it's kind of a sadness, but I don't want to lamenting that kind of reality. Sansu was a kind of, ignored, taken, but I think that at that small scale of density, it's smaller than Japan, Korea. We have more possibility in dense condition. That density gives us possibility. That's why we so crazy looking engineering jump. But this I think is very kind of, I don't want to say it's Korean, it's definitely PA48. Yeah. Yeah. Densiflora, yes.
Thank you. And Dong, I knew about Kongjian because he was here. I was actually on leave when he finished his dissertation and graduated. I was in Rome. And then I didn't really have any contact with him until I was on the American Society of Landscape Architects annual awards jury, and I saw the campus, the rice field campus. And what we were struck with was, this was, first of all, a kind of coup or a tour de force that a designer or a team of designers would persuade university officials and people in a regulatory environment to surround the campus with rice fields. And for the recreation spaces and the study spaces to be embedded in the rice fields. We thought, okay, that's persuasiveness. There's a technical side to that, which is tremendous. But I came away thinking, wow, this firm really is doing great design work. And we knew the force of Kongjian. But I think that's when I began to see that this is a real design hand. And the reason I'm saying this anecdote is that now it's 800 people. And what we just saw leads me to the very same conclusion, that work is technically sophisticated, it's responsible, but it's really beautiful. Just say something about how you managed to do that.
Well, working with Kongjian is not an easy job.
That would be true.
He has no spare time, working all the time, so you have to follow his track. He always have innovations thoughts, so every time he had a new idea, he will call you immediately, no matter what you are doing. So I think if you want to do a project that in really good condition, you have to have that, no matter efforts or goal, something. So in Turnscape, we already very familiar with this kind of situation. Yeah. So, but I think now, the new generation, they are so different from our our condition, our lifestyle. So actually, in recent days, where they don't want to work all the time. Yeah, we have the similar situation in Peking University. Also, even the students, they don't want to focus on the design work also.
They want to go home at 6.
Yeah, that's right. So, and the previous panel of Junyong talk about AI. Actually, that's what we are doing now, because we have before COVID. I mean, we have 400 employees, but now we cut half of them. So we have to more efficient, more follow the similar track. So I think AI really helps. No matter rendering or the idea, you just photograph. I mean the rendering about the idea very quickly. Yeah. So we are now getting in the track using the technologies and combine with new generations lifestyle and even my generation and even I have a senior. So I think we are so Kongjian's work style or lifestyle is not duplicable, but now we have several generations and we have new technologies, and these things combine together, I think, is Kongjian. So I'm very comfortable of, as you mentioned before, I'm very comfortable about I'm very certain about the future of Turnscape. Yeah, not just the project we're done, but also, the marketing. So thank you.
So I think everyone here has to have faith in the ability to transmit the knowledge and the practice of reconciling technique and a cultural situation, political situation, and beauty. That has to be replicable. It has to be passed down, even though, as you say, young people have grown up in a very, very different environment. This is true for Chiza-san and Han, and I think it is, as we all approach an older age, maybe the most important thing we do. I want to open the floor to questions. We have a bit of time. I feel that I just have had such an amazing day. I hope that you all do too, and I hope that you have questions for these three amazing people. You first.
Obviously, my stamina has been spent very well today. Thanks for inspiring and amazing presentations today.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I have been working in the American landscape architecture practice for 12 years, led by British in New York. And as a purely practitioner's perspective, this whole idea of sansu, have you had any experience that your client or general public don't understand your core thought of this sansu? And I'd like to hear that in that case, how did you educate the client or public to make your core idea really work to the site?
Me? Actually, the sansui in Japanese, I think we don't use that anymore because we're using a teien for the garden. So, but from now on, I think I really feel we need to use that sansui as a garden because, well, first of all, we have such a strong culture of garden design throughout the history. Why don't we leverage that kind of value of garden culture to create a new concept of, I would say, the new garden or a kind of new definition of garden, which is not the kind of, because teien is a kind of, in the world we started to use it like 150 years ago, and as a modernization of Japanese society. And te means functional space. It's also the two, compound of two words, two characters. Te is a functional space, and is a kind of enclosed, very tiny spaces. So teien is a very limited meanings. But a sansui is its nature is all about, right? So probably I kind of inspired by your question to use the sansui or probably some different words, which redefine the garden, because I really feel we need a garden, especially the era of the algorithm of AI and SNS, because in nature, in the garden, sometimes it's very, I would say, unpredictable and uncontrollable. I mean, not so much, because sometimes being in a garden and got a mosquito bite or droppings of the birds will be hit your head. But anyway, so that kind of thing will never happen in AI and SNS generated in the space. So those kind of things will be probably raise the resiliency to what's going to happen in the future and so on. So that kind of thing will be probably kind of the logic to persuade toward the sansui for the future client.
So I think Nick and Jung-Yoon, you have rebirthed this mountain and water. And Marissa has just carried it on in her entire life. It's clear. Okay, Karen Lee.
Thank you. Thank you all for such inspiring talks. You all touched, of course, in your work and in your talks on climate change, and Gary started with the urgency. We have less and less time and more space to handle on a planetary scale. And I wonder when we go towards that plural form of sansu, the planetary form, maybe, what do we need to think about? So, Wang, you spoke about the transition from sponge city to sponge planet. What do we need to know when we scale? What do we take and what do we change? But also, Miyagi, in your work, and of course, in the work of Park Kim, it's be interesting to hear your thoughts.
Oh yeah, okay. Thank you for the question. And it's a scale, I think that's a very important issue. But sometimes scale is mostly given. I think what Jung-Yoon and Nick show us is the big, huge scale of a region, right? Natural territory. But I'm doing very small garden. That's contradictory. But I got a very good talk with yesterday, urban designer. But the relation between architecture and city, same thing, urban design and architecture. It hardly designed urban design, right? Also, we hardly designed the whole region. Maybe landscape architect do a little more than architects, I think, because of the territory and scale, Central Park. But we got lots of lessons from them. But mostly scale is a given. But we can really jump on our own scale in academia, in maybe GSD. That's why I really learn a lot from Jung-Yoon, everyday learning. I'm mostly practicing. So that's why I come here very often with Gary and Anita. Really inspiring. So that question really gives us lots of maybe, as a practitioner, I think I really inspired through all the student project and all the agenda in school. And I try to execute in my practice. Yeah, my competition winning, that one is not solely from my idea. All the inspiration from Gary, Anita, students, all mixed up. That influence. And so that's why I came here. But I think that relationship is very important. I know you question about scale, but I think more kind of, I mentioned the distance between Seoul and Boston, that scale.
And so, Dong, thanks, Yoonjin. Dong, what do we need to know in order to proliferate the sponge planet?
Yeah, scaling up from sponge city to sponge planet. Yeah, I mean, last month I just talked about this topic with IUC, and they just have a new version of NBS International Global Standard. The one of the most challenges is how to scaling up to implement the NBS. So for that question, I always asking about no matter my clients, my colleagues, if your solution spend more money. I mean the budget. It's definitely not nature-based. So if a project, it looks green, but it's not green at all. I mean, sometimes the greenery is just a decoration. So I mean, the nature-based is have to be low budget, low maintenance, easy to construct, follow the ecological processes and let nature do the job, minimal intervention. So this idea are easy to say, but hard to implement. So that's why earlier this panels gave me a lot of thought. We have to, like Coach said, we need to ask critical questions about ourselves. Is it really nature-based? So when I talk about nature-based, my client always asks me, I don't want to that nature because it spend too much money. I say, no, if you think it's too bad, if someone proposed a solution, spend more money, then definitely it's not nature-based. So I mean, if you want to scaling up, you have to tell public, everyone, the clients, the nature-based solution, I mean, Sponge Planet, it's cheap. It's not cheap. It's low budget, easy to construct. So that's why we look into the past. We found the wisdom of our ancestors, how they cultivate our land, how they cultivate our planet. They find the solution very, minimal intervention, but can transform the whole planet, the whole, the territory. So that's why we are continue to propose all around the world. Yeah.
Keep on, keep on. Another question? Did you see someone? You have a mic right there.
It's a quick question that I actually always wanted to ask Kongjian. And it has to do with, how does one proliferate? Let's call it a method. When labor conditions around the world are so different. And not exportable.
Yeah, who does the work?
It's not present in the way you speak, but it's inevitable to not see it. So I just wondered, how do you address the proliferation of that? Another question. Are so different around the world, and yet we're all suffering from flooding. How do you, because I think you're able to do it, because the conditions in your society allow you to do that.
That's right. It's policy.
But how do we do that with
Yeah.
different, very
Your question makes me think of Benjakiti Park, which one of the innovations was to use the army to build it.
right?
Yeah, it's quite unique. So in my slides, you see that our overseas projects, most of them are in, Southeast Asia and Middle Asia. Yeah, so you never see I introduce something in Europe, in US, because we don't have. So it's a different structures, different organization, different industry. Yeah, so I always said Professor Yu doing something in his very short time, but doing something maybe normal people do many years can done. So one of his idea is you have to implement everything quickly, because it's so urgent, not just climate change, but maybe he shortened ages, I don't know. In China, you already mentioned, we have top-down system, and every mayor's term, following a law, they have 5 years term, but normally they go to another city 2 or 3 years, so everything needs to be done very quickly. And you mentioned that Benjakiti is different. It's a very unique project because it's meant to be the gift to the Queen Mother. So they ask us to implement in the very beginning. It's meant to be in 12 months, but the whole because of COVID, it's long term in 18 months, and implemented by the army, quite unique. But now we have more connections with a private developer. I mean, in China, most of our project, I mean, 90% of our project, the client is a government, so it's different. But now our international projects more and more is private developer. They concern something else. They're not just concerned about how it looks. Nature looks beautiful. They concern about how can we get our money back. How can we catalyze our maybe residential price. Yeah. So we have to tell them the nature-based solution or the city-spawned planet. Anyway, they can have more benefits, not just to nature itself. It can benefit the surrounding area, the developing, the residents, even the price of your house. But at the same time, can save your money, save your budget, but beautiful at the same time. So we are. We are improve ourselves occasionally. So yeah.
That would be music to the developer's ear, right? A better bottom line. On behalf of the Faculty of Landscape Architecture and the GSD and the students in this building, I want to thank you, our panelists. And I want to ask Nicholas and Jung-Yoon to come and give final remarks. Please thank these wonderful designers.
We very briefly discussed how we're going to structure this closing remark, but we actually are sick and tired of listening to ourselves. So I'm sure you are too. What I really like to do is, first of all, just as a way of expressing my deep gratitude to all of you to actually make your way to come here from all the way from like Malaysia, Singapore, and Korea, and Thailand, everywhere, and New York, of course. I really like to open this up to the audience and really like to listen here what you think of this 1.5 day. Yesterday, when I was having my opening remark, the central discussion of this exhibition and conference was how we gonna look at the methodology of each designer rather than their national label. How do they respond to the given bioregion so that the knowledge can be transferable and shareable while still located in their bioregion? So that was actually my central question. And I think that can be done through all this discussion. So in that sense, and also from other aspects as well, I'd really like to hear from the workshop leaders who came back after some years of graduation, and also all the designers from the bioregions that we talked about. That's what I want. What about you, Nicholas?
Oh, I think I agree. I'm also tired of hearing not your voice, but my voice. I'm tired of hearing. 18 months ago when we started this, I didn't really know where it would go. It really started with just a conversation, and as I said yesterday and throughout the day, I've learned so much, and today especially, I've learned so much. And when I made those remarks yesterday, those 6 points, they were kind of a book report. Like, this is what I think I've learned, and they're kind of a hypothesis. And today I feel like, in some sense, they have been realized. So I've seen so many brilliant approaches to meeting the Earth where it is and to try and figure out what that means for a project. I've seen design approaches that think well beyond the project boundaries into multiple vectors and dimensions of context and problems. I've seen approaches that are dealing with true dynamics and continuity and change and motion and things that we know aren't fixed, from the time that you plant what you plant to understanding how things are going to fall or remain. And this question of lack and abundance, which I've seen in spades here over the first day, that in fact trying to imagine the outcome is something which requires radical thinking at both ends, which has been really exciting. I think I've heard a total commitment to not only dealing with climate change, but to elevating the status of landscape architecture to be one of the key players in making this a project. And I saw the call that we need to, in a sense, elevate that, made very explicit. And I think for me, as the sociocultural anthropologist, returning to the question of culture itself, both as a kind of traditional resource, but as a site of ongoing change and expansion, has been exciting to see from these exercises of doing intercultural communication, kind of working around traditional boundaries, and then also just exactly kind of a moment like this, watching so much sharing and so many conceptual innovations taking place just through communication. So I've been really pleased, and I feel like it's been very exciting, but that's all I want to say. And I think Chongyun's plan is exactly right. We want to hear some methodological approaches precisely to the design of the exhibition and the workshop.
Panels as well. Oh, I really want to hear what panel one also think of, because you're all mesmerized by your talks. Anyone volunteer before I call you?
Cold call. Yeah.
Yeah, really? Okay. Peak. Yoonjin showed Pix Siberia Studio project on his screen.
Hi. Oh well. First of all, I'm very happy that you gave me this opportunity to be part of this workshop, and yes, I was your student at Trans-Siberian Studios. At the moment, there's sometimes I might not understand the whole premise of the studios, but then as I have some time to sit back and think about it, and then attending this kind of I would say symposiums, and then hearing all the talks, I felt like it's very inspiring to me, and I start to connect all the dots how it makes a lot of sense to me, and I also see how yourself and also start to keep developing your thesis around this ideas of mountain and water as well as the sections, the deep sections. I'm very happy. I'm very happy to be back here, if that makes sense.
So
Thank you.
Finally, you understood what I meant after 7 years.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Pik.
Thank you.
No. Oh, yeah. Youngmin.
Again, thank you for inviting me to this wonderful event, and thank you for all organizing this symposium and exhibition. At the very end of this, symposium, some kind of question came up to my mind, because my topic was searching how the modernization of mountain and water in Korea, and I realized the modernization in Asian countries is basically westernizing. It's adopting the way of thinking of Western, and inevitably it's kind of discarding the tradition. So my question maybe to you, the organizer, is this an idea of mountain and water, can it apply to US or Europe, like this Asianity you mentioned about the Asia as method? Can it be, a method for the American or European or westernized landscape architect or design field? I'm just curious.
I think a question like this came up. I mean, not being a design practitioner, I don't know how to sell this to a client, but it sort of came up in this form. That is, if this is let's say, a cultural conceptualization that is going to travel, can it travel practically? That is, how do you convince someone to take these terms up as valuable ones that will help then convince people to invest resources and see solutions? And more broadly, I think your question is, can this localized cultural concept move to another place? But if it's gone one direction, certainly it can go in another direction. I think the question is what kinds of solutions come out of it. Sorry, solutions is a bad word, right? That's too lowering. What kinds of design innovations can come out of this such that people can find solutions and beauty and sustainability?
Now you're using GST language.
You see what I'm doing? Okay, I think I'm learning. I think it's all possible. But one of the things I think that came up as I was just watching as a privileged observer and eavesdropper is the idea that sometimes things become reduced. And I don't think that mountain and water is being presented as a reductive term in any which way. I think it's much more of a dynamic relationship that seems to open up a lot of new possibilities.
I think that question really also go back to what Taehyung asked for panel 4. I think to be able to really utilize what we learned from today and yesterday to another place outside of Asia, I think the central question is how are we going to adapt it? For example, like Shenyang campus of Transcape project, we saw like a just field of rice paddies, right? And then my question also was like Anita to Kongjian, who work on the paddies? And Kongjian answer was simple: students. Because it's an agricultural campus, university, right? They just have plenty of students who actually voluntarily work on as a part of the coursework. So that's the kind of context why the Shenyang campus turned out to be rice paddies. Because also you're asked to build 6 months, right? Only given 6 months. That's what Kongjian said. So if we cannot just follow the entire thing of one project, but we just need to digest. So let's say everywhere in the world have all different conditions of labors and bioregion or economy, culture. Of course, we accept that thing because Taehyung must work on Singapore and everywhere as a field operation director. So we just cannot apply one knowledge to another place. Of course, we all know that. But I think the central question is how are we going to extract the corpus of knowledge from what we all saw today. I think that's the thing. So that requires our wisdom. It's not ready to use, of course, but I think that's the work that we have to do. Julian.
I think the issue is we need to be comfortable with difference. So I think the whole point, when we did the Big Asian Book Workshop in Beijing, 2019, that's the people in that room said this is the first time we've ever come together as a broad Asian spread, going from Japan, Korea, down into Southeast Asia, and to even start with a discussion. I think the danger of landscape architecture and also why we lose against architecture is when we start to regeneralize, we lose the complexity of our practice. It lessens us. And I think we need to be comfortable and embrace difference because that's actually the depth of what design practice is. And then being able to talk and discuss, because the biggest flattener has been sustainability, I would argue, in the last 10 years, followed by climate change. So we all will we can end up in a very repetitive, quite boring discussion, whether it's verbal or written. So what's happening here today is this question about mountain and water is culturally positioned in Asian, particularly East Asian philosophy. You do not want to universalize that. That is a culturally specific philosophy. That does not apply to Australia. We are working through our own philosophy as a post-colonial country. And I think there's been, I don't know why we feel, I think we might feel that we become more powerful if we have a unified agenda.
and we see that with the International Federation of Landscape Architects, that agenda starts to mean very little, because every discipline actually will have a similar agenda for climate change, sustainability, all of those things, making the world better. So to me, the whole notion of why bringing Asian thinking and practice, and also the knowledge coming from design practice, that is what deepens us. It allows us to present ourselves as designers. We're not going to get lost as ecologists or restoration, whatever. But there's just been a tendency, and I don't know what this anxiety is about, on wanting to generalise. And yet we're the discipline that is the most culturally, ecologically situated, politically situated, but we keep on wanting to simplify ourselves, and it makes us look really reductive against other disciplines. And also part of that, we don't want to talk about design practice. We don't want to talk about what we're actually doing. We'll tend to just fast track going, we will save the world. And also the other thing we'll say, if only people would listen to us. But part of it is that we don't understand ourselves. And that's why these discussions, which are about from practice to practice, academics and practitioners, the worst thing we do is when we separate out conferences with academics and practice. It's that dialogue, but where you're accepting that different things are happening. That's the depth. Because from my perspective, part of the reason why I'm interested in Asia is I actually think the Western discourse is really boring, and I think the projects are really repetitive. And I think the innovation is actually sitting in Asia, but we haven't been looking to it, and I think that's what we're seeing today. There is so much, discussions on materiality are far more superior when we get into the Asian context than when we talk about it in the Western context. So that's my thing, is do not try and generalize. It's the diversity of Asia and approaches, and also watching as we start to change the pattern of Asian students going into the West to learn and go back. And that's starting to change, where they don't need to do that anymore. And those teaching in Western universities need to start accepting that as well. But that was a moment in time. So, the rise of the Chinese unis, Chinese students don't need to go elsewhere, to get an excellent education anymore. So we are at a big shift in the order of the world, and that's exciting. So do not generalize mountain and water.
I think Anita has a question. Yeah. No. Great.
Gillian, thank you for that. Because as I reflect on yesterday and today, I would say I never saw any repetitive work. In addition to that, I saw an extraordinary amount of creativity. And I felt a great sense of freshness and liberation. I also heard throughout the 2 days, I heard the notion of what I would say translation. And I think that's what you're all practicing. Nicholas, I think, brought it first up when you ask where is the threshold from a poetics of painting, of representation, to one of action, to which Professor Wang answered after you have established a syntax that allows you to pull apart things and recombine them. You can begin to translate. The word that was used just now, let's see, where is that note? of course, your work, Uni, of alternative nature speaks exactly to that, this facility that you have, that I've always admired about your work, that is so abstract and so precisely about nature without really ever copying it. One cannot confuse that we're looking at nature in your work, and yet it is so much about it. Let's see, that was a word I did not know, and I don't know what I did with it. It is, hold on, just bear with me. Mitate, did I get it right? The poetic mind, what a fabulous concept. So, for me, it's, of course, we all hate the word solutions. I would say even innovation is not right. It's a poetic...
I take it back.
That's okay. It's the poetic imagine, but you were the first to point it out, right? In a way, when you talked about how do you express the extreme condition of a medium, and it's that sort of poetic mind of seeing one thing as another. That was your sentence, that I thought was just encompassed everything that I've seen in the last and heard in the last day and a half. So yes to Gillian's proposition to not repeat, to not generalize, to maintain general methods, but to maintain that connection with your very specific poetic sensibilities. And that's what's come out, one presentation after the other for the last day and a half. And I have to thank you for this.
Thank you very much, Anita.
So before I was a landscape architect, I was a trail builder. And 40 years later, coming back to the GSD, I spend my summers building 200-year-old trails up in the White Mountains. I've had a regional practice. But when I saw the program advertised, I said, oh yeah, mountain and water, because these are going to be my people. So you're my tribe. And your introduction yesterday was wonderful, because when I build a trail up on the side of a mountain, we have to work with what we're given. We find stone on the mountain, and thanks to an $800 drill and splitting wedges and everything, we split 1,000-pound stones and zip line them off the mountain to build a trail, hundreds of steps sometimes at a time. Last summer we moved 100 tons of stone by hand and by cable car, with gravity, to build stairs up a 200-year-old trail. But I think the thing that I'm coming away from, particularly with just this last session here, and there's discussion about our relationship to our sort of brother and sister professions in the architects and engineers, is the thing that struck me was, on one hand, we had one practice that's using, other than trails, probably the second most oldest tradition of human presence on the landscape, which was the landscape as a metaphor of nature. And so, the gardens that were described that are, that have many centuries more than we have here in an American history, are, that's an original metaphor of how to treat a landscape. And then we see a bridge that makes a new mountain for literally for a metaphor of, whenever that was last summer, whenever you were working on that, and the transcendence of, basically the use of a metaphor to describe to anyone who has, a reasonable amount of thinking capacity, that's the message of what we bring as a contributing to the environment. And it just seems like that's our message, is we have the ability and the inclination and the interest and the passion for understanding the difference and magnifying the value of human artifice in the context of nature. So I'm just thinking about, like, that's what I'm bringing home at the end of the day today, and I just want to thank everybody in the room for all of the wonderful contributions. But it's been really, really good.
Thank you. I actually would like to ask a question to Yukio. Last December when we met, I think it was just that I just heard what you were just saying very briefly, that in pre-modern Asia, we didn't really have the concept of nature. I think that's what you said. Is my memory correct?
Yes. So in Eugene Wang's talk this morning, you talked about Tsuran, which is, we now call nature, but that's a binomial compound that in the late 19th century was transposed to correspond to the English word nature. So it's self-so-ness or self-sameness, or one of the virtues of the term is it's virtually impossible to translate into English coherently. It could take a whole conference just to talk about Tsuran. Yeah. So nature is itself is a huge problem as a term. It's like landscape, but but again, the expedient way to go about it is just to mention that, but then use it anyway. Actually, can I say a few words about the comments? I wanted to thank you both and everybody for a really, really dynamic 2 days, and I had two small observations about the last panel and then the conference as a whole. The last panel, and especially in Deng's presentation and in the work of Park Kim and also Shun's discussion of Kyoto, I was inspired to think about how meeting the earth where it is and flooding in particular has been so important for some of the subjects that I study. And people know, for example, Kyoto, the Kamo River on the east side is constantly been marked by a history of flooding and then drying up and flooding and drying up. And in the year 1603, during one of its dry riverbed moments, a female entertainer from the provinces named Okuni came and began a famous performance that would later capture the attention of townspeople and spread in fame and eventually become one of the most popular forms of dance ballads in Japan. We now call it kabuki. And so think about that. Kabuki was born on the dry riverbed of the Kamo River one year, and it's all about, when it's dried up, it's unregulated territory. When it's dry, and the towns, people come in, commoners come in and appropriate it, and there's all kinds of vernacular art forms that develop, and then those become the defining stuff of what we think of as Japanese culture today. So I was immediately struck by that in hearing the last panel. And the second comment about the conference overall has to do with my position as someone who teaches at Harvard College. And I, among other things, I teach a lot of traditional Japanese architecture and have been involved in creating something called the architecture track at Harvard College, which was created about a little over 10 years ago and became the first, it created a space for the first time for students at Harvard College, which by then was over 350 years old, to study architecture as undergraduates. And so Harvard comes very late to this. And we've been thinking a lot about how to teach architecture as a humanistic, liberal arts subject that's not necessarily for practitioners or pre-professionals, but as just an important way of thinking about the world and experience and understanding the world. So it has elements of practice, but it also is very much a humanistic, intellectual, cultural tradition of its own. And I'm really inspired by this conference to think very seriously about landscape architecture in a similar way. And so this actually runs a little bit counter to what everyone's been saying about landscape architecture as practice and as a practitioner. I'm not a practitioner. You don't want me to be a practitioner of landscape architecture, but it's what I came away with today was just the richness of the ideas. And in speaking with fellow, friends who are landscape architects in the past, I get this feeling that people are thinking, we really want students to come to us with ideas, who are humanistically formed, have great, liberal arts educations, and come and get informed. But I've started to think a little bit differently about this and think that actually through practice and specific case studies of the best kind, you generate new ideas of the relationship between man, nature, and everything else that you're now bringing back to the liberal arts and are becoming part of the canon of things we want to introduce to first-time students that we call the humanities. And so thinking about landscape architecture as a kind of humanistic a vital component of intellectual history, and beyond that, as a way of experiencing and understanding the world, I think is just going to be more and more important, especially for newer generations of students. So I guess this would be a comment, but also maybe a plea or a suggestion to begin to direct your discourse beyond that of a practitioner and beyond, someone who's directing your commentary to clients and others, to the world of ideas more generally. And I don't know if that's generalizable or if that falls into a discourse about what is generalizable, what isn't. But it just strikes me that the ideas here are very rich and deserve to be shared beyond the communities of practitioners of this field. Thank you.
Okay, I think that time is up. Thank you very much, Yukio. The time is up. Let me ask Marisa say just one final thing because she flew from Thailand all the way here. Just say goodbye. I think all of you may want to hear from Marisa. You can just sit here and then say. You don't have to. Thank you for being here.
As I said yesterday, I came here about 15 years ago as a guest, actually as a parent. And now, in the classroom, in this auditorium, and, spend the time with faculties and students and already practitioners. This is actually for me, it's such an honor. Thank you for really inviting me. And I receiving lots of inspirations this time. Even what Yukio says, that this can be a part of humanity, because right now we are everything becomes so specified and divided, getting all this, but sometimes we forget about the whole as a nature and where we come from. And so I think that, last 2 days when, I hear, unfortunately I didn't hear everything, but the overall, I think that we have to going back to our kind of thinking about the origin to balancing it out, that what is happening in the world. So, today it's, again, thank you so much that, giving me opportunity to even talk. And I'm very much inspired for these 2 days. And yes, I would like to say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much for listening. Okay, so let's close.
One of the things that sociocultural anthropologists do is study the registers of a culture, that is the words that show up again and again, and then the avoidance registers, the things you're not supposed to say. So I've learned both of those things today, which is very important. But in any case, with that education, we'd like to thank all of you for your participation and your enthusiasm and the great ideas that came out today. So thank you, and join us for the panel.